Something has shifted on this battlefield, and it didn't happen with a press conference, a treaty signing, or a headline. It happened quietly in the darkness over eastern Ukraine, where a small composite-wing drone locked onto a Russian logistics convoy and eliminated it before the drivers ever knew they were being watched. That's not a tactical footnote. That's a strategic signal. I've spent decades analyzing how wars are actually won, not in the speeches, not in the proclamations, but in the grinding, unglamorous war of attrition where logistics determines survival. Napoleon understood it. Rommel understood it. Every serious military commander who has ever fought a sustained land campaign has come to the same inescapable conclusion. You don't defeat an army by killing its soldiers first. You defeat it by starving them of fuel, ammunition, and the ability to move. When that supply chain breaks, the entire force structure begins to collapse from the inside. What Ukrainian drone units are executing right now is not improvised. It is doctrine, deliberate, systematic, and increasingly precise. Let me give you the operational picture as it actually stands. Ukrainian strike teams, units like the Ivan Franko Group and the Luftwaffe pilots, are conducting what military planners call integrated ISR strike operations. Intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, feeding directly into kinetic action, often within the same engagement window. Reconnaissance UAVs identify targets. FPV drones with reinforced warheads close the kill chain. In one documented operation, 6 Russian Bukhanka transport vans were destroyed in a single day by a single unit. 2 Russian soldiers were neutralized in the same engagement. Now, to a civilian audience, 6 vans may sound minor. To a logistics officer managing supply lines across hundreds of kilometers of contested terrain, the loss of 6 transport vehicles in one sector on one day is a crisis-level event. Multiply that across multiple units, multiple sectors, every day of the week, and you begin to understand what is actually happening to Russia's ability to sustain forward deployed forces. The math is brutal, and it's working. What makes this campaign strategically significant beyond the individual strike footage is the cumulative pressure it is applying to Russian operational planning. Russian commanders have been forced into a fundamental dilemma that has no clean solution. If they move supplies during daylight, Ukrainian drones find them. If they move at night, Ukrainian operators, increasingly equipped with thermal-capable systems, find them anyway. If they disperse their logistics to smaller, harder-to-detect vehicles, the per-unit cost of supply increases dramatically and efficiency collapses. If they concentrate supplies in depots for efficiency, those depots become high-value fixed targets for deeper strike drone operations. We've already seen this dynamic play out in documented strikes on fuel rail cars in Russian-occupied territory. Tank cars carrying fuel and lubricants burned out on the tracks. We've seen it in the strike on a Russian logistics depot in Donetsk, where a night operation eliminated a significant portion of stored supplies. We've seen it in Luhansk, where a separate unit destroyed an enemy ammunition depot, and in the same mission, pivoted mid-flight to engage a mobile air defense unit spotted during the approach. That last detail deserves emphasis. The ability to dynamically retask a strike asset mid-mission based on real-time intelligence developed during the strike itself represents a level of tactical agility that most conventional military forces struggle to achieve. Ukrainian drone operators are demonstrating it routinely. Now let's talk about what this means for the air defense dimension, because that story is being underreported. Ukrainian strike drones recently destroyed a radar-transparent dome housing a Russian radar station, the kind of system designed specifically to detect and track aerial threats. The dome was struck first, exposing the station. Then the station itself was eliminated. The following day, an air defense system in temporarily occupied Crimea was destroyed. Estimated replacement value, approximately $15 million. Here is why that matters beyond the dollar figure. Russia's air defense network in occupied territory is not a seamless, redundant grid. It has gaps, seams, and vulnerable nodes. When Ukraine systematically degrades those nodes, particularly the radar systems that provide targeting data to surface-to-air missiles, it creates windows of reduced coverage. Those windows allow deeper penetration by subsequent strike packages. Each degraded air defense node makes the next strike marginally easier, and the one after that easier still. This is how air defense suppression campaigns are designed to work. The Israelis have executed this concept with precision for decades. The United States built entire operational frameworks around SEAD, suppression of enemy air defenses, during the Gulf War and beyond. Ukraine is now applying similar logic using commercially evolved drone technology at a fraction of the traditional cost. That is a genuine strategic innovation, and it is compressing Russia's defensive depth in ways that will have consequences far beyond the current frontline positions. There is a counterintelligence dimension to this campaign that rarely receives attention in public reporting, but it is operationally significant. Russian forces have been experimenting with thermal suppression, what some reports have described as camouflage systems designed to reduce infrared and visual signatures. This technology is real. Militaries have pursued it for decades. The problem is that camouflage, thermal or otherwise, is never a complete solution. It reduces detection probability. It does not eliminate it. What Ukrainian units have demonstrated, and the Matterbird's footage documents this in stark terms, is that FPV operators have adapted their hunting techniques to account for concealment. In one documented engagement, a Russian soldier opened fire with his assault rifle while hidden inside a structure, apparently believing the drone had not located him. The muzzle flash gave away his position. The drone adjusted. The target was eliminated. That is not a technology story. That is a human factors story. Under extreme psychological pressure, the instinct for self-preservation overrides tactical discipline. Russian soldiers, increasingly aware that Ukrainian drones are hunting them with near constant persistence, are making decisions shaped by fear rather than training. That cognitive degradation among frontline troops is itself a strategic effect, one that compounds over time as drone pressure intensifies and the sense of inescapability deepens. Psychologists have a clinical term for what happens when the human brain determines that a situation is genuinely inescapable: tonic immobility. The fight or flight response fails entirely. The individual freezes. We see this documented in the drone footage, soldiers who have stopped trying to evade, stopped trying to fight back, registering only the final seconds of an outcome they can no longer change. That psychological signature visible in frame after frame across different faces, different ages, different sectors of the front, tells a larger story about the state of Russian frontline morale that no official briefing will acknowledge publicly. Zoom out from the tactical picture and ask the strategic question that actually matters. Where does this trajectory lead? For the first time since the large-scale Ukrainian counteroffensive of 2023, Ukrainian forces have liberated more territory in a single month than they lost. That is not a statistical anomaly. That reflects a genuine shift in the operational balance, driven in substantial part by the systematic application of drone capabilities across logistics, air defense, infantry suppression, and counter-drone operations simultaneously. What Ukraine has developed, partly by necessity, partly through genuine innovation, is a distributed strike model that does not depend on the large conventional force packages that traditional military doctrine requires. Instead of massing armor and artillery for breakthrough operations that present obvious targeting opportunities to Russian systems, Ukrainian forces are using swarms of relatively inexpensive, highly adaptable drone platforms to degrade Russian capability across multiple domains simultaneously. The implications extend beyond Ukraine. Every NATO defense planner is watching this campaign with intense analytical focus. The lessons being written in eastern Ukraine right now will reshape how Western militaries think about logistics vulnerability, air defense architecture, infantry survivability in drone-saturated environments, and the integration of commercial technology into military operations. The doctrine being tested on these fields will appear in defense white papers, military exercises, and acquisition programs for the next 2 decades. China's People's Liberation Army is watching as well. The PLA has invested heavily in drone development and is drawing its own conclusions about how drone-centric warfare reshapes the offensive-defensive balance, conclusions that will directly inform planning around Taiwan contingencies and South China Sea operations. Russia is watching, and despite the battlefield losses, Russian defense industries are accelerating their own counter-drone and drone production programs. The lessons of this war are feeding back into Russian capability development in ways that will challenge NATO planners long after any ceasefire. The drone war over Ukraine is not a sideshow to the main conflict. It is the main conflict. The frontline movements, the territorial exchanges, the artillery duels, all of that operates in the shadow of a deeper campaign being waged in the logistics networks, the supply depots, the radar sites, and the minds of soldiers who have come to understand that nowhere within range of a Ukrainian FPV operator is genuinely safe. That psychological reality, the constant, inescapable presence of aerial observation and strike capability, is itself a form of strategic power that doesn't show up cleanly in order of battle assessments or weapons inventory counts, but it shapes every decision made by Russian commanders trying to move supplies, position troops, or maintain the forward momentum that Moscow's political objectives require. When trucks entering occupied Ukraine are spotted, tracked, and destroyed within minutes of crossing into Ukrainian drone coverage zones, what that represents operationally is the collapse of the assumption of sanctuary. Russian logistics operators can no longer treat their movement as routine. Every convoy route is contested. Every shelter is temporary. Every moment of stillness is a targeting opportunity. Armies that lose the assumption of sanctuary in their rear areas don't lose immediately. They lose gradually, then suddenly. Supply shortfalls become capability shortfalls. Capability shortfalls become tactical failures. Tactical failures accumulate into operational collapse. We are not there yet, but the trajectory is visible to anyone willing to read the operational indicators honestly. The Ukrainian drone units hunting Russian transport along these logistics routes are not simply destroying vehicles. They are methodically dismantling the material foundation upon which Russian combat power in eastern Ukraine depends. And they are doing it with a degree of precision, persistence, and operational sophistication that would have seemed implausible when this war began. That is the strategic reality behind the footage, and it is more consequential than most people realize.